number one, the trend has to change. Whether I see it or not, there would be a disaster here. Capital is global. The capital structures that you got are shareholder value here.
Right.
They're not the Germanic model of stakeholder value or the Chinese model of stakeholder value,
Right.
which means you have to go increasingly to the capital markets. India does not have sufficient capital that it needs for its own growth and development, which means that you have to create models that create international trust. So you must change. From the little I've seen, I do not believe that Indian directors are blind. But I think they are blinded by friendship and network relationships.
Right.
They are very conscious of what's wrong, but they don't know how to handle it. So we don't have a sufficiently professional process to the search for board directors.
Okay.
We don't have a sufficiently professional process to the development of board directors once in position. We still have an over-reliance on who's the shareholder, what's the network. Let's have people that basically support my view and don't disturb things. So, ironically, India has gone to the opposite extreme. It's almost forgotten monitoring, and it's overemphasized mentoring.
Okay.
So, friendship, niceness, supportive, makes the chairman feel good, makes the CEO feel good, under a lot of pressure, and they should be made to feel good if they're performing. But where's the hard conversation?
Where's the hard conversation?
So, one nation in the world has gone monitoring without mentoring. And ironically, here has gone mentoring without monitoring. Yeah. So I can see legislation in India is necessary to break this cycle. But then you have to have the professional development that goes with it. Well, that's going to be an uncomfortable situation everywhere.
I mean, I know Apple's an extreme example. I understand
It is. But it is a situation that many corporations have faced. And the only way around that is not legislation. There is no state intervention into that.
Right.
It's basically building strong boards.
Okay.
And then the problem with strong boards is that they have to be sufficiently developed to be long term.
Right.
You've done a very good job, and you've met all your targets. You've done X, Y, Z, and I come to you and I say to you, I'm going to sack you. And you say, well, why? How? I've done a good job. And my answer only is, yes, you have, but you're not needed for the future. This organisation is going to go into this sort of phase. So many of the CEOs that have been sacked haven't necessarily been sacked because they're incompetent. They've been sacked because their competence is no longer required, but they're still operationally effective.
Fair.
Now you need a strong board with a smart chairman that can actually make the case as to the type of competences we'll have in the future. And this individual is leaving, let's say, gracefully. They're not sacked. It's a departure which is mutual to both sides.
Right.
Now, having boards that have that degree of sophistication, regretfully, I don't see much of that in India. Yes, it is. And please don't think you're unusual. Turkey's the same, Germany's the same, Ireland's the same, Greece is the same, Italy's the same. So even in high-performing countries like Germany versus low-performing countries like Italy and Greece, they still have the same impediment.
Fair enough.
So you'll find many Germans are also irritated with the governance processes that are working there. But they just simply have a different financial structure to the country that compensates for that. So governance in family-run businesses is going to be a concern. And especially if there's no public exposure that you've got funds from any sort of public source, and it's all private, it's going to be an even bigger concern. And the reason fundamentally is still human rights. Why, when it's your company, and you're doing it, and you're taking all the risk, and you're getting no support from anybody, should the state have a right to intervene and tell you what to do when the fundamental process or the fundamental principle is the state only intervenes when it's public money?
Right.
It's my private money. It's like me coming to your home and saying, you cannot have the bedroom you want, because in reality, bedrooms should be like this. Well, what are you going to tell me?
But then the state can turn around and say that, look, you're a listed company, so although it's not government money per se, at the end of the day, in another way, it is for public interest that we're doing it, because you have taken money from individual investors.
That's okay. If it's a listed company, if it's a public liability company, it's fine. It's when it's a private company and it's only family.
Limited company.
Yeah. It's a limited company which takes no money from outside, no investors. So the argument for investor protection, I think, is a very sound argument. But in many countries, like Germany and like Ireland and so on, those companies which are private and family have not taken money from any public source. They have made their own money by their business.
Okay.
And that's where the governance challenge lies.
And the state over there is hands off.
I don't know what principle it can use to be more interventionist.
Okay.
What the Germans have done, interestingly, the Germans have tried to create a very different philosophy to running the state. They haven't used governance, but they have used, if you like, community rights.
Okay.
So they've not created a country which has got equity markets, debt markets. They fundamentally created systems which are bank related.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to find some funding to build a railway from A to B, you go to your People's Bank, Volksbank, and you'll have a 30-year relationship with the bank. You have low interest rates, and that's essentially how the German economy has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And that different sort of balance of tensions in the state fundamentally is more attractive than shareholder value. So I think part of the argument is to recognize that governance can only go so far. The other part of the argument is to raise the question, when does shareholder value, Anglo-American type thinking, when has that reached its limits?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're seeing right now, it's reaching its limits. Absolutely, and please don't again think there's anything new here. You go to any state in the Middle East, you go to so many states in Africa, they don't have caste, they call it tribe.
Right.
You go to certain parts of South America, religion, Catholicism. So yes, it is a major concern. And I think that introduces the topic of diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Diversity has been overwhelmingly in the press and public been seen as gender diversity. There are other sorts of diversity issues. And quite right, here is caste and religion. In other places it's religion.
Mm-hmm.
In Israel it's Judaism. You have to try doing a business, try working in Israel when you're not a Jew.
It's completely monotheistic.
Yes.
So is there a way of getting around it now?
It's not a problem of business or governance. This is a problem of national politics. And it has to be elevated to that level.
Okay.
It must be a transparent public debate about the reality of what sort of state do we need to function in the modern world.
Right.
And it's deeply sensitive.
Yes.
Deeply sensitive. I mean, you can have riots for this. Whole governments can collapse because
That's
of
correct,
this.
which they do.
Which they do, absolutely, which they do. So you're in the very unfortunate situation of, at times, feeling helpless, watching yourself and your nation deteriorate.